Welcome to Manu Forti Ministries presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I'm your host, Reggie Key, and today is my specific honor and privilege to welcome Prophet Joann Witherspoon to the program. Hi, Prophet.
Well, how you doing, Evangelist Key?
I'm all right. Thank you for putting some respect on my name. I didn't even do it myself, but you put my title out there.
Yeah, so that's all right. Evangelist Elder Key.
Make it known.
Yes, yes.
So, I say you're a special guest of mine, and it's my special honor and privilege to have you on here because I do believe you are the first author that's going to be on the show whom I've helped self-publish. So this is going to be good.
Yeah, this is exciting. This is really exciting. Yes. Thank you for having me too. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Very welcome. You just came off of, what was it, last weekend that you just hosted your second conference in Dallas?
Yes, I did. The Apostolic and Prophetic Gathering Conference 2022. Yes, this is the second one that we've hosted.
Yeah, so everything is kind of settling down now.
No, we're not settled down.
Okay. All right. That's how
we're steady moving. We are steady moving. Yes. So it's behind us now. Mm-hmm.
Good. And the thing of it is, one of the reasons you are very much operating in what I call your genius, but I just want to make sure that you recognize it because there's something about recognizing, even as you recognize my title, there's something about recognizing the title in the function in which you operate in that just elevates your executions to the next level. And so that's very much where I'm coming from today. This is where I've been coming from with this whole entire series. And again, I wanted to especially make sure that I promote and encourage you as one of the people who entrusted me with your manuscript to get not one, not two, but 3 of your books out to the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what?
Go ahead.
When of course, when we started that project, I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. And if I can be very candid and honest about it, I was afraid. I was afraid that what I had wasn't good enough. Yeah. Many people have written books on that particular subject being deliverance. But someone said to me, but they haven't read it or understood it from your perspective.
Right.
So when that was said, that kind of gave me a boost to continue with it and then to put it in your hands for you to take the time to not just edit it, but then to put it in a format where it flowed, because I just had stuff everywhere. And for you to be able to do that, I thought in and of itself was a challenge for me, but man, I cannot even imagine what it did for you to take a look at this and be gifted, talking about genius, to be able to look at this and put it in a format where it just simply flowed. So that took away a lot of the fear, the apprehension that I had, and to say, wow, and I always had it in my mind that it was supposed to look something like that. I just didn't know what the finished product was going to look like.
Right, and how to get there.
And how to get there, exactly.
I'm smiling because you're promoting my genius. This is not about me, this is about you today. We'll get back to the end a little later.
All right.
So you also had a chance to, we both shared the stage last summer in the Gifted Conference hosted by the Kingdom Investment Center. So you've had a chance to hear some of this messaging before, but never on a one-on-one basis. The Lord began to tell me as I moved to South Carolina to get people to understand what it is that this workshop and this book is about, is to just start doing these one-on-one type of interviews. And so when I'm going to ask you to start us off, I'm going to ask you 2 things, actually. One is to take yourself back to before you heard my workshop, which was about genius, and be in that mindset when you answer this question. And that question, Prophet, is, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
Okay, so thinking about where I was before, nope, I never saw myself as a genius.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't. I mean, you mentioned genius, and it was Albert Einstein. Everybody knows about Albert Einstein. You hear about some of these prodigies that are born, young children, you know, playing pianos and got these minds of, you know, they're mathematicians, they're scientists, because you think they're born, or you, from my view, they're born like that.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was me.
Yeah.
I never saw myself.
Word.
Huh?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I never saw myself as that.
Yeah.
You know, I had gifts, but yeah, the average person, right? It was the average person. And then, you know, sometimes our lack of affirmations, what we're told we can or cannot do or be or cannot be, has a lot to do with how we even see ourselves.
It does. And
I didn't see myself as that. I didn't see myself as this genius. I didn't see myself with all of these, like I said, other than some gifts, okay. And it was in this little bubble, if you will. It was with a certain group of people.
Sure.
But after that, after the teaching on the common genius, and then presenting it in the way that you did, I was like, oh snap, I got something going on.
You do got something.
Look, that did something to my spirit, because one of the things that I continue to, and again, these are self-affirmations as well as the word of God. And then I tell people, I'm conscious of when I hear people compare themselves to other people, because the scripture says it is not wise to compare ourselves amongst ourselves.
Yes.
Right? So when we begin to compare ourselves, well, I don't have this, or I don't have that. I don't have the education. I don't have the training. I don't have the experience. I don't have whatever it is. You're looking then at somebody else and what they have versus what you have. And that was what I had to begin to do, was say, and I have this ability, and this ability looks different. Somebody else may be doing the same thing, but I have a different way of doing it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just that this is the way I'm built. This is the way God created me, and I'm okay with that. And that's what that was. It was really getting okay with that and seeing myself, put myself in a different frame. Framing myself different than the way I see comparing myself to somebody else.
Yeah. Because the thing that we always do when we come up with this laundry list of, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have that, it's always relative to somebody else that we have.
To somebody else, exactly.
And I mean, you've helped me with identifying. I still haven't memorized where that scripture is yet. I have it written down, but I got to get that written in my heart though, like where that scripture is that talks about comparison, because it's an easy trap to fall into. No matter how often you affirm yourself, no matter how often you look at the word of God that says that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that you know it right well, Psalm 31, 19, we still fall into these traps where we just begin to like, but I'm not doing this though. This person's fellowship is this person is, and it's just something that we have to constantly mortify our flesh to, renew our minds from, right? So that we can function the way God intended us to. You use the word prodigy. I love that. I've never, that's a great word, but I've never associated prodigy to genius as it relates to these workshops. But it is very much a prodigy type of vibe where we look at, these little children, like you said, they're born being able to play the piano, and we're like, well, doggone it, I don't have anything like that. But no one else was born. I know you have a twin, but no one else was born to be Joann. Somebody was born to be Joan, your sister, but nobody was born to be Joann.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so you have to, I tell people, as readily as you respond to your name, you should be comfortable responding to the fact that someone calls you a genius. And the thing of it is, we just don't get that enough. And that's why I'm here. That's one of the things that I'm put on this planet to do, is to tell people, we're used to taking on labels that tell us we're less than, but we need to get comfortable with labels that tell us that we are sufficient. We are true humility is not thinking too highly or too lowly of yourself.
I had a pastor friend of mine who questioned me one time about who I am. And this speaks about speaks of identity. This is what we're talking about here.
Yes.
And for some of us, some of us are very quick witted. You know, we can just answer at the drop, right? It depends on the atmosphere I'm in.
Yep.
When we're really having a deep conversation, what I want to consider a deep conversation, and for her, she asked me this question about who I was, and I didn't answer her right away.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people might think, well, she doesn't know who she is. No, I had to think about that, because in that moment, was I caught off guard? No, I just had to really seriously think about it. So when I called my pastor friend back, I could go down the list and I could tell her, this is who I am. Okay. First of all, talking about being a child of God, it may sound like a cliche, but yes, I'm a born again, Holy Ghost filled believer. I'm a prophet. I'm an apostle, right? I'm a mother. I'm a friend. I am, I'm an author. I'm a grandmama. I could go down the list. Yeah. So to tell you, I don't know who I am. This is who I am. And again, some people may have to stop and think about that. And that's okay. Doesn't mean that they're less than, because in that moment I thought, look, because I couldn't answer her right away, I was less than. Immediately the enemy wanted to come in and wanted to kind of make me feel bad because I didn't have the ability to answer her dead on the spot. No, let me go back and write this stuff down and tell you who I am. And it wasn't about being arrogant. It wasn't that. And some people can think that, you know, your response may come off as arrogant. Because I even said to her, I'm very confident in who I am. I'm comfortable in my skin. Do I still need work? Of course I do. But I'm comfortable in my skin because it has taken some time to get here. And there was a time that I wasn't here. And it has been the journey of people like you who have encouraged me, who supported me, and support is huge. You know, something, again, just reframing what you're saying, you know, thinking about prodigies and geniuses and look, talking about them and their IQs. Well, my IQ may not be that. Doesn't mean that I'm not a genius. Because see, today I know I'm a genius. And I don't say that arrogantly. I say that confidently because this is who I am and this is what I do. Going back to that scripture about comparison, I can give it to you. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12. For we dare not make ourselves of the number or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves amongst themselves are not wise.
Man, you looked that up quick. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so you said so much there. I just want to get into this idea of, you know, I think sometimes when we hesitate, someone asks us that question. Not many people ask you that, but when somebody asks, like, who are you? We get into, well, what is it that I do? Right. And then immediately what we do is we say, well, like, I know me, I struggle with, at least lately, I'm like, I'm not doing enough. I need to be doing more. And so when somebody asks us, first of all, we err by instead of saying who we are, we go to what it is that we do. And then we hesitate in saying that because we're like, well, I'm not doing it to the level that I want to though. And so there's always this kind of, you know, second guessing and this place where we have to think about, well, who do I want to tell somebody that I am? Because there's another thing, once you begin to tell somebody who I am, there's like, oh, I have to live up to that, right? And so, you know, I like that you brought in two things because it flows right into where I go with this. You brought up Albert Einstein and you brought up this idea that who we are is related to what we're prompted to be. And you brought up this concept of, I don't have a high IQ, right? And here's the thing. Most people, when I ask this question, you didn't even give me a chance to ask it. You already put it out there. I asked, okay, if you don't think you're a genius, then who do you think is a genius? And most people, you know, unequivocally say Albert Einstein. And I'm like, okay. And not to take anything away from Albert Einstein, but what I tell them is like, he was only one type.
Right.
His IQ might have been high in physics.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that genius is relegated to high IQ in physics. That's just one form.
Right.
And what we have to understand is that there are many different lanes, there are many different portions to what genius looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And we would do well to not compare ourselves to just an Albert Einstein, but to know who we are and who God made us to be. So
right.
There's a quote that I pull on, and I believe I had this in the conference, and I'll say it, and you let me know if you remember it or if it sounds familiar or not. It purportedly comes from Einstein, and he said this, and the Lord's been working on me and giving me like more understanding and depth to the imagery that he created in this quote. It goes like this. It goes, if you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it will spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
Right.
Did I bring that up in the conference?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yes.
And that hits the nail on the head right there. When you imagine this fish trying to grab a hold of a tree and climb it. Because if anybody who's lived on the planet any amount of time knows, when you see this fish out of water, you're like, that fish don't belong there.
Yes.
Right? Like that fish is gonna die. If somebody don't get this fish,
if somebody put it in some water.
In some water.
Come on. Yes.
Right? In its element. If you don't get this thing in the right element, it's going to die. If you don't get your genius in the right element, it's going to die because you're not going to recognize. And you know, if there's enough people, and we as African Americans have had to deal with this all our lives, if there are enough people who come along and say, hey, look, you're not doing this well, so you're not this. And if we keep hearing that over and over again, we'll begin to believe it and be like, man, something must be, I'm defective. Something's wrong with me because I'm not functioning like this person over here says I'm supposed to be functioning. But if this person can't recognize that you're a fish out of water, then you shouldn't be listening to them in the first place.
Yeah.
And you have to like separate your thoughts of who you are from their thoughts to understand, like, hey man, get me in some water and watch what I do. Watch me come to life and watch you literally see what I was designed to do. Right. And so then it becomes this thing of what's my lane, what's my element, and how was I designed?
You're right. Right.
Because how I'm designed might not have anything. How my genius is designed might not have anything to do with IQ. I don't know. You know, I mean, in fact, Einstein wasn't even viewed as being an academic when he was in high school, when he was in secondary school and post-secondary school. He thought different, and the people who were in academia were like, yeah, you don't fit, you don't belong here. They told him he was a fish out of water.
Yes.
And he came to redefine the very elements of physics because he didn't accept that label. He was like, no, I got something to offer though. I have something to contribute, and it changed the world. And we have the capacity to do the same.
I have a friend who is older than me. And when she was in school coming up, you know, they weren't tested, you know, for learning disabilities. And she grew up thinking that she was stupid because, you know, she didn't learn like everybody. She has dyslexia. And I just so happened to have been watching, I couldn't even tell you what program it was. I was channel surfing and I saw this docu on people with dyslexia and how they thought and how creative, that was the thing, how creative they were. And at that moment she was at my house at that time. I was living there in Chicago. It was before I moved here. And I immediately called her to the room. I said, you got to come see this. You got to come see this. And she sat and she watched this thing and she looked at me. And at that time I was working in the public school systems and I was working with special education students. And I always told my special education students, you're not stupid. You learn different. That's all. You can do what anybody else does. You just learn different. Little did I know, and even as we're speaking right now, how I can connect that to being a genius. How we learn, just simply how we learn. It doesn't talk about that fish trying to climb a tree. How we learn doesn't make us less than. It just allows us to think different. It takes us down a different avenue, if you will. It just allows us to, even for people, if people are at all paying attention, to see your creativity and to glean from you well, maybe if I learn to do it that way,
Yeah,
maybe my job won't be so hard.
exactly. So I almost think I know who you're talking about, but maybe I'm not. The person who I think you're talking about is now an author as well, because I
Yes,
helped her
indeed.
publish a book.
Yes, yes,
right?
yes.
So without saying her name, like we turned around and got her to be an author as well.
An author.
At least,
and she never thought she would be.
She never thought she would do it, right? And now she's like, hey, can I come to you for a second book? I'm like, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right?
It is amazing. It is amazing and when she saw this, when she saw this docu, and it just did something to her in that moment. Mm-hmm. But there are layers. There are layers and time that had her believing that she couldn't. And that is the stuff that we have to take off. We have to take off those layers. That goes back to being transformed by the renewing of our minds.
Yep. And so the thing of it is, I know someone else. We know someone else. I don't think she'll mind that I mention her name. Matter of fact, when we finish today, I'm gonna call her up and be like, look, I need to interview you. Our good Pastor Nikki is dyslexic, right?
No.
Let me not say it that way. She is not dyslexic. She was diagnosed with dyslexia. Okay. And so she said that she learned that she processes information differently. Once she understood, like she says, she literally sees information come to her in blocks. I believe this is what she said. Okay. And once she understood that it's okay, this is how she thinks, she began to learn how to rearrange and place those blocks, which guess what? That allows her, she is one of the most, like when she does her spoken word pieces, they are long and she does not read them from a book. Because of how she blocks them together, she can remember them because of how she arranges the words in her mind. I can't do that.
Yeah, I've heard her, and that's phenomenal.
And I'm like, no, like I can't do what you do, but that doesn't mean that my method of execution is less than. It's more accepted, but I was marveling at her before she told me that, and after she told me how she learns, I marveled at it even more. Like, wow.
Yeah.
And so I love that you brought this up, because this brings me to one, you just ahead of me. I'm talking to a prophet. Like you just already ahead of where I'm going, because I always bring in this example about these. Do you remember? Well, I won't put her name out there. I'm putting too many people's name out there, but okay. There was a person who used to go to our church who was a principal of a school, and she had some students that were troubled. They were in special ed. We call it, IEPs now, individual education plans. Yes. She was like, hey, look, can you just come talk to them? Can you spend some time with them? They're 10 young boys in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. They spend all school day in one class. And she was like, they have these emotional outbursts. They're hard to contain. And so they put them outside of regular classrooms because they were disruptors, to be honest. And so I was like, yeah, I'll come. I would spend every Friday with them. I would just come in and chop it up with them for, I don't know how long, maybe an hour or something. And so I said, hey, look, why not begin to tell them that they're geniuses? Let's see how this goes. Let me go through my workshop with them. And it was very interesting because one, this is how you see when you're programmed. When I said, hey, look, I want to talk to you all about how each of you are a genius. They would look at me like,
right.
You're offended. Like they were used to hearing people tell them that they had some type of deficiency. Yes. They were used to roasting one another. I would sit back and watch them roast one another and just call each other all kinds of names, having the greatest time in the world. It was fun being called less than, but when I challenged them and said, you're a genius, they were like taken aback by it. And so I immediately went into, I went into where we're going next, which is to talk about what you're passionate about, right? And so how I explain passion is, tell me what you hate and I'll tell you what you're passionate about. Right? Tell me what it is that you were that makes you feel less than, that makes you feel like you don't belong, and I can tell you that that's what your passion is. It's not about what you love when it relates to genius as God gave it to me. It's about what you hate, right? Right. So I always, these workshops were framed to get youth to respond. So I knew if I ask kids what you hate, I know I'm gonna get a room full of hands, right? So I asked these little boys, I said, tell me, what do y'all hate? And these boys who could never agree on anything, they were always arguing with one another for who gets to play with what and who's sitting here and whatever else. All of them told me the same thing. And do you know what that was? Let's take a wild guess.
If I know anything about special education students, from what I remember, they hated being treated different than anybody else.
Yes, but what's the system that treats them different from everybody else, though? What's the environment?
It was the system, the environment they were in the classroom.
The classroom, the school.
Yeah, the school.
It was like, we hate school, Mr. Key. Now what?
Yes, they hate school.
What you gonna do with that? And they thought they had just wrecked my whole workshop, right? But I was like,
it was a school, right?
Because if you remember what I said, that the thing that you hate is the thing that you were meant to fix, then you telling me that you hate school means you're meant to fix the school, which means I'm looking at 10 future educators. And they were like,
wow,
that's not how I thought this was gonna go. And I'm like, no, it makes sense though. I was like, you hate school because it treats you like you're less than. When you have a different learning language than the 3 learning languages that schools typically teach. There's like 7 to 8 different learning languages or learning styles, but the schools typically teach from an audio perspective, a visual perspective, and a logical perspective, which is where math, we understand math in our left hemisphere. But the right side, the creative side, gets kind of suppressed, right? So I'm like, hey, you all are probably expeditionary learners, meaning you learn best by putting your hands on things. But of course, that doesn't float in the classroom. And you put your hands on something in the classroom, out of turn, you're told to like sit down, have a seat, keep your hands to yourself. And so now these young men being put in this, like, I can ask any child, is it normal for a third, fourth, and fifth grader to be in the same class all day? And they were like, no, that's not normal. No, it's not. So they hated this system that made them feel like you don't belong here. And I was like, that's right, you should hate it. But what you got to understand is that God has designed you, the language that you speak that they're not speaking. Like when you go learn something and they're speaking in a different language, it's like literally it's being lost in translation. And now that makes you feel less than. And I was like, but if you take your learning style, if you identify what your learning style is first and foremost, and somebody tells you there's nothing wrong with that learning style, and you take that and turn that learning style into a teaching style, now when you plug back into the school system, having been educated, you can then reform it because you're like, hey, look, I can go into a classroom and speak a language that a lot of your kids aren't hearing. Now you're supplementing what's missing. And you're helping to fix the system, because as long as the system keeps preaching and teaching from 3 languages, you're leaving 4 to 5 learning styles off the table, and people are feeling like, well, y'all say no child left behind, but I feel really left behind right now.
Really left behind, exactly.
So I'm like, that's how this works. That's how this was meant to work. God is we already know this, but God is very intentional and smart about where he places us, when we're born, where we're born, how he designed us, because he's like, I see this brokenness in the world, and I see how it's ostracizing my children and making them feel less than, and I have already done something about it. I put you on the planet to be birthed into this thing that makes you feel less than, so that you then basically find your ministry. You're like, you know what though? Like, I know what it feels like to feel this way, and I'm gonna do something about it.
Exactly.
I recognize when I see somebody operate, I recognize it when it's operating. I recognize when somebody is being hurt by it because I went through it, and now I'm gonna do something about it.
That's right. I'm gonna do something about it. Exactly.
So my question to you becomes, Prophet Joann, like, what is it that you hate? I have a feeling, I think I know what it is, but I want to hear you say it. You got and you like me, you got a couple things you hate though.
Man, you know what? I guess I kind of feel like the kids, those boys felt. To think about what I hate to see people, I really do hate to see people hurting. I hate to see people and hurting, being treated unjustly.
Yes.
I hate when that people are not heard. You know, they have something to say, they're not valued. Those things, they're not valued. I hate look, this is so funny because I was talking to Apostle this morning. Well,
Mhm.
you know, anybody that know me, that really know me, I try to stay organized.
Okay.
Oh my God, I hate this organization. Be it, and this is challenging because I'm always looking to fix it. How can I move things around? How can I fix these things? But more important, when it comes to what I really hate, I have to go back to the Bible. I have to go back to the Word of God on this.
Okay.
Because when I gave my life to the Lord, I didn't know what I was. I just wanted to be saved. I wanted to be a good little Christian,
Mm-hmm.
pay my tithe, give my offering, and go home. That was
so
it.
Much more. Yeah.
It was little did I know.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got into the Word, you know, I mentioned to you how when I study the Word, I often get these other versions, and for the life of me, I probably wouldn't be able to pull it up right now. But, and the Lord may have spoken this to me, but it was said, hate the things I hate and love the things I love.
Yes.
So as I have searched the Word, I see things that God hates. And because I am his prophet, then I am to hate those things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm to hate sin.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time, even after getting saved, how I had not really learned to hate sin.
Yeah.
And to hate sin, actually, and I'm gonna say this because this is gonna be recorded, and I'm gonna say this for anybody that's listening that think that they say and they still dabbling in sin, is because they have not experienced a true conversion. Because conversion will cause you a real conversion, a turning towards, once you get saved and your apparatus, your spiritual apparatus now is functioning, you're to turn towards God. You ain't supposed to keep walking away from him. You ain't supposed to be sidestepping. Right? He gives you the Holy Spirit to help aid you with this. So when you really turn towards God,
mm-hmm.
your conversion, because you putting everything behind you, the world behind you and everything, you made a conscious decision to really turn towards God, to go through that conversion state. That conversion state aids you in hating sin. Yeah. You hate it. You recognize it and you hate it. You recognize how it displeases God, what it does in people's lives. And though I'm not the evangelist, I can still call it out because why I was once there.
Yep.
And look, somebody had to put their finger on that pulse and say, this is sin right here, for me to get to the place where I actually hate sin. It stinks. So that is the thing, because I hate it, is the thing now. And because I was there. And I saw, you know, I think it was the way it was dealt with, even in the church, you know, and the way people were ostracized and criticized and just made and belittled. You know, the churches, but that wasn't it. Mm-hmm. That wasn't it. And so you have to know, Evangelist Key, that for me, even in getting delivered from sin, I too was ostracized. I too was talked about. It was like, okay, you're sinning, sit on the back row. Right. Well, what's the point of coming to the church if I'm made to sit on the back row? Or if you're going to make an example out of me, hear me, you're going to make an example out of me from your pulpit. Right. That's like telling somebody that's not what this is about. Like, yeah, sit in the back. Like, we're going to sit in the back. We'll deal with you later. Or better yet, we don't want to deal with you because now I'm treated like I got leprosy. Right. Well, no, I ain't got leprosy. And I ask you to pray for me, and you don't know, you can't pray for me because guess what? You yourself are dealing with some of these same issues. You speaking. So please don't get me started, okay? Mm-hmm. So this is the thing that I hate, and there was no restoration. Okay, so you want to pray, but it's restore me, because you need to be restored. You need to have, the person needs to experience, or at least have some hope that they're not going to continue to live like they're living. Not to give up, because you know sometimes you just stay in it because you just feel like it's just hopeless. Ain't nobody gonna help you. So what do? You just stay there until maybe God sends somebody into your life that will encourage you, that will help you, that will have exactly. You could be heard the same thing from other people, but it'll be in that right moment. It'll be in that moment, in that very time. It's amazing how God just sets up the time to bring that message to you, or to bring you exactly what you need in order to break the chains of bondage, so you are set free. So if you ask me what it is that I hate, it is that, because I see people, I have the compassion. God has placed within me compassion, talking about what I can, who I am. I'm compassionate, like Jesus, where I can see it and want to move towards it. And then to be reminded, even when I move towards it, to be gentle yet firm, because you got when you're dealing with sin, you got to be firm. You can't be coddling it. Firm, firm enough, loving enough that the person will receive it and get delivered, so that they can receive peace. Because I can remember those days when I didn't have the peace.
You didn't have it, right?
I didn't have peace, and I didn't have any joy. I didn't have any all of that, and especially saying, "Well, I'm saved, I'm born again, but where's really my peace and my joy?"
Right.
Because I'm still tormented, I'm still being harassed, I'm still being defiled. I still have these things, and I just thank God for the people that God had already placed in the earth to help me along in that journey.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't mind speaking like the Derek Prince and the John Eckharts and the Juanita Bynums and the Paula Prices, and there were some other ones that may not as well known, but they were still available to help me. My sister, Apostle Arnetta Salazar, she's my sister, and there are others who did not give up on me. They did not. So, and then taught me how to suffer long. You know, that whole fruit of the spirit called long suffering. Suffer long. Put up with me in my sin. Prayed for me, ministered to me. And it's like staying with that woman who's in labor and wait until she delivers. They didn't leave me. They did not leave me. And those were the teachings, the ministry, the prophecies, all of those things have brought me and are carrying. They have brought me where I am, and they're carrying me. They're still yet carrying me, if I can say it like that. So you ask me what I hate. You ask me what I hate. That's what it is. And because I hate it, that's what I address. But I couldn't understand that until you did that gifted. Until we did the gifted conference, the gifted conference, and you talked about the thing we hate is the thing that we're called to address. I remember the Lord telling me, the thing that I've delivered you from, now you go back and deliver somebody else.
Moses.
The thing I delivered you from, now you go back and get somebody else.
Yep.
I was on drugs, go back and get somebody on this, help somebody get off them drugs. Right? You were, I was a whoremonger. Let me just talk about it. Let me go and help somebody with this whoremonger spirit. Let me tell you what it's looking for. Right? This is what it is. Being able to recognize it. You know, dealing with me very young. Oh, Jesus. When I talk about some things, that's because God has delivered me. Spirit of jealousy. There's no room for it. Go back and get somebody. You can spot it. Selfishness. You can spot it. Go back and talk to somebody. Go back and deliver these people from this thing. These are the things that we oftentimes don't readily see.
Well, once the beam has been removed from your eye,
you go, right there. You can see somebody else.
Exactly. And somebody else is like, I see that. I see that operating. I know what it is. And everything that you have said, the inventory that you have walked through, the reason why I'm smiling the whole time is because you're confirming what I know, who I know you're called to be, who you know you're called to be too. Because when you talk about hating disorganization, when you talk about hating people that don't have a voice, you know what causes disorganization and for people to not have a voice in the church, and not just in the church, but in the world, it's unclean spirits.
Unclean, right.
Unclean spirits or demons are what cause people to have all the different things that you mentioned, and you've been talking about it, and you've said like the word deliverance, but what I know that you hate is to see people oppressed of the devil.
Yes, I do.
Oppressed of the spirits that are not of the kingdom of light, but they're of the kingdom of darkness. And as a prophet, you have the voice, you have the insight, you have the vision to call that joker out and be like, you got to leave though.
You got to go. Right.
I've been delivered. Now it's my job to be a deliverer, Moses.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so that's what I knew. I knew because I've seen and heard your fruit many times. And I'm like, this is who she is. This is what she hates. I knew it. Like it doesn't even take the spirit of discernment to it just takes observation to be like, This is what you hate.
Yeah.
And so the whole time you were talking, I'm like, yep, deliverance. This is, you hated to see people oppressed. You hated to see the church treat people who were already spiritually oppressed by being further oppressed in the church. And so you're like, hey, look, I need to be equipped, and I need to equip others to begin to deal with this blemish that's in the world.
Yes, that's exactly it. You know, this whole talking about equipping and learning and teaching. And I've always, whatever I've learned in, you know, in the church, whatever information, I work to make it simple. I can't do all of the other stuff. I don't mean to be funny. I can't. Let me just give you an example. I had to take a radiography class, and the instructor that they had, first of all, science is not my strength. You talk science, any science, if you don't keep it simple, if you going into physics and chemistry, I do okay because I know some math. But science generally, yeah. You talking about frustrating that language. For real it is. And the instructor that they had literally was talking over my head. I didn't learn a blessed thing. She had this little workbook. She had these questions at the end. She gave us these handouts. And I tried my best to follow her. Needless to say, after she did the teaching, we were supposed to be prepared to go and take the test. Well, I looked at it and it was all still foreign.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. I took the test. Needless to say, I failed it because I just I could not comprehend it. And I sat, and I'll tell you, after the first time I failed it, I sat down and I literally dismantled all her material. I dismantled it, the handouts, the questions, and I took the time, each and everything I read, every paragraph, and searched out the question, you know, because she had questions, searched out the question that would go with whatever was in the paper. Because stuff seemed to me, going back to disorganization, and I searched it out. And I put it in a format for me where I could understand it. It took and as I did this, of course, guess what it was doing? I was remembering it. It didn't matter how it was phrased. It did, because, you know, when you're taking a state test or a national test, the test can be phrased, it can be put in different ways. You just need to know the principle. You need to know. Yeah, that's all you need to do. So this is what I did. It took a while for me to do it. And I called it an investment. It was a $400 investment. And I passed the test, but it was after I dismantled, pulled apart, and put it back together in a format where I can understand it.
Yeah.
I'm taking that example and putting it with the messages that we sometimes hear in the body. When you talk about our learning styles, visual, auditory, that intellect, how does, you know, some people may say I'm charismatic, you call it what you want to. But for me, I've always said, God, you know what? I'm a simple girl. I ain't never been one to sit and we got to make it complicated, or it's so deep that I can't get it and I can't apply it to my life. How is this going to work for me?
And not just for you, but for others. You know what that reminds me of? When I was editing your books, when I gave you back your manuscript, you would go through and you would say, hey, look, that don't sound like me. Like, I need you to rephrase that, because it wasn't just about you. You were like, I got to keep this simple so that the person who reads this book on deliverance, see, like, your books are about encouraging and strengthening the prophets. And then you have a book in English, and now you have a book in Spanish that talk about deliverance 101. Let's keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
And so a couple of times you were like, yeah, you got to change the language though, you know, and keep it, you know, keep it simple, stupid, right? And so there's a need for that, because sometimes, an important topic can be missed if it's just going over our heads. And deliverance is a very important topic that's not dealt with enough in the body, enough in the world for people to receive liberation. And so you mentioned this word investment. You made a $400 investment
to get my license.
Like, I'm gonna get my return on my investment, right?
Right.
And so that leads me to, like, we talked about the first component of genius. I don't think I had a chance to say all three together. It's passion, talent, and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So as we begin to talk about an investment and a return on investment, now we can get into talent, because the talent that we have is not anything that came from us. Most of the time I tell people it's generational, and it is generational. It comes through family ties, but ultimately those ties link back to the source, which is God. He has put an
Right.
investment in us,
Right.
and he's like, where's my return? And that
Exactly.
investment, I mean, the whole parable of the talent was all about investment. And
Investment.
look,
Right.
I'm gonna give you something, and when I come and I'm gonna go somewhere, and when I come back, I need to see a return on my investment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the question that I have for you, and it's evident, but it's just, it's good to identify and say it simply, like, what is your talent, or what are your talents that God has given?
My talents are teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm anointed to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no problem saying, see, this is, look, there was one time I would have been ashamed to say some things. Today, I'm not. And this is my disclosure. I've got some education. I've got some college education.
Mm-hmm.
I am not formally taught.
Mm-hmm.
I'm spiritually taught. I'm taught by the master.
Do you remember, was it during the conference, or was it I can't remember when Apostle said this, but he showed us, and I think I reminded us in my workshop, like, the things that you learned that the Spirit, no man can teach you, but the Spirit teaches you. And that's how you get these prodigies from a young age that are able to do this thing. They come out the womb knowing how to do some things that no man has taught them.
No man can do, right.
And we have that as well. So I just wanted to go ahead.
So the teaching, I have that ability. I thank God for that gift. We want to talk spiritual gifts, prophesy and lay hands on the sick and, discerning the spirit, all that other, I can do that. Right. I also have a gift to take a little something. You can give me a little something and I can make something of it. That part, people tell me that's the creative part of me. I don't utilize that. I know that God gives me vision. I can see something. If it's something that he says to do, or if I have an idea for something, I can see it I can work it and see it come to fruition. I have the ministry of helps. That's a gift. I have a ministry of helps. I may not be able to do the job, but if you ask me, I'm ready to put both hands in and say, what do you need me to do? If it's licking an envelope, if it's stuffing an envelope, licking, send it off. I can do that.
Yeah. So that all those different things culminate into, you have multiple talents, just like, the servants in the parable had multiple talents that were given to them. And ultimately they were accountable to recreate those talents. And remember, I was saying for a long time, I would talk about this parable to kids in ministry. And I'd be like, okay, I wanted them to understand what it looks like to put their talent in the earth. That's what the one servant did. And he was told that you are a wicked and slothful servant. And he was kicked out of the presence of the master. And that was a warning to the youth that I would talk to, as it relates to like their talent and music, and, looking at what the industry, the world does with musical talent and all this other type of stuff, putting it in the earth and not getting any return on investment to God. But then the Lord started convicting me, like, but what does it look like? How you going to preach on and teach on what it looks like to give me a return on my investment? Because what you can take a talent and then give God the credit, honor, and glory for it, but he's not getting a return on his investment.
Right.
He's looking for, hey, look, if I gave you this talent was a measure, right? It was back in the day, it was a measure, it was a weight of a precious metal. And he's like, I want to get equal weight, equal measure of this precious metal back. Same kind. I want the same kind back. And so your talent, you said you can take a little and make much out of it. Your talent as being helps, your talent as being a prophet, your talent as being a teacher, right? I've seen you birth this organization, Jehovah Mashet in Dallas, where you are a training and equipping center where people come in with a prophetic gift and you say, all right, I'm going to turn you into a prophet though. Right. I'm going to make sure that who I've become, you become as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the definition of activating and recognizing your talent and then seeing it. And then, real genius doesn't just keep focusing on me. Eventually it says, now that I've built myself up to where my humility is restored, I don't think any less than or more than myself. Now it's my turn to identify others and do the same for them.
hmm
So
I
that
have
God
had
gets this
with,
return on his investment in the earth.
yeah, and with the Jehovah Meshach Teaching and Training Center, this is, our motto is aiding individuals in fulfilling kingdom destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that they have something to do. And I'm just there to help them discover it or unlock it, going back to teaching. And then once I teach them, okay, so now that I've taught you, let me show you what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And then you show me. That's what it is. I show you, you show me, and you go on and now you do it. You teach somebody else. And by teaching someone else, then you get to show them, they get to show you. And, we want to call that reproduction, replicating. Okay, call it that. And that's fine with me. This is what we do. I do. And the team, those that have agreed to partner with me, this is the way we do this. We strengthen individuals in those areas. We give them a platform and opportunity to be stretched using their gifts and their talents, because it's not about me. And I'm okay with that. I think that many times there are ministries that, they teach them and then they just let them go. Well, I give them, look, I don't need to give you permission. Let me just show you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Just let me show you. Just do this. We had this, with the lockdown, with the pandemic lockdown, many of us have not had an opportunity to go and minister in places maybe that we did before, or didn't have really the opportunity. I will say this: there are a couple of people that are team Jehovah Meshach, and last year, when the Lord told me to do this again this year, because we had one last year.
Right.
This year, he told me what to do. He gave me the strategy. I called the two people, and both of them, one of them had gotten ordained, but then had not been speaking anywhere, hadn't done anything. And just recently, the other one has now been used in their church. Jehovah Meshach gave them a platform to stir up the gifts that's within them.
Yep.
This is you want to call it the beginning, but it definitely ain't the end, because now I'm like, start this up. We gotta keep it bubbling. We gotta keep it going, because I've had that opportunity. And what do? And talking about how it's kind of been passed down. I come from a line of preachers.
That was surprising.
And my grandmother, I knew my great grandfather, but I never saw him in action. And when I saw as a minister, he was very loving, very kind. My grandmother, however, was the one that I saw, and I got called under her ministry. I accepted a call under her. I'm the fruit of her labors, if you will. And one of the things that she said when I got called, and I went to her and I told her I was called, one of the things that, not even that she said, but what I observed with her, was that for any minister that was under her, she was going to help. She was going to help them grow. She was going to help promote them, give them opportunity. I saw that with her. It was never about her. It was always about somebody else. I saw that. And there are people that sit in these pews that'll tell you flat out, I don't want to hear all these other ministers. I come to the church to hear you. But she ignored them. She was not one of those ministers that was about pleasing man.
Right.
She was about pleasing God. So when I got called, I wasn't the only one. There was two others, the three of us under her. And she gave us each, every month, she sat down. It was so funny. She sat down every month and she gave us, she had a schedule, and then told us when we were preaching. My grandmother grew up in a time where women weren't preaching.
Sure.
Can you imagine what that was like?
Yeah.
So now she's in a place where she can help somebody else do this. So by doing this, I won't say maybe that, God put it on my heart. Is it because I saw that? And then for him to say to me, and then going back to Ephesians 4, Ephesians 4, first apostles, prophets, evangelists, and the pastors and teachers. Is it that? And knowing that, for me, it's important that what's in me, that I give out, And I may not be able to give it out through preaching a message, but I can definitely give it out through teaching. I can give it out through training. I can give it out through impartation. And then watch those that receive it go out, that grow and go out, and then reproduce that, have an excitement about it.
Yeah.
That is it right there. So in
doesn't
the area
matter
of
if they
deliverance,
overshadow you. It doesn't matter if they,
you know what?
like, look, man.
I'm Mama Joe. I'm Mama Joe. No, you can't overshadow me. As a matter of fact, I want you to shine. I need you to shine, because that says to me, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like Jesus said, when I go to he said, these works and greater shall you do when I go to my Father. So if I get ready, if I'm preparing to go to my Father, these works that I'm doing, greater shall you do. So no, you can't even overshadow me. I can't even be jealous of you. Let's just talk about it, because that's jealousy, where I'm just gonna make you so that, no. As a matter of fact, I might put you out there just so that if you make a mistake, you'll be all right, because you're gonna learn from it. I learned some things from last week's conference. It was very uncomfortable. I'm gonna put it out here. It was a little uncomfortable. There were some things that just I learned, and I'm like, man, what does that do for me? It helps me grow. It helps the team to grow. That's all it does.
Yeah, I was telling you when y'all were having that difficulty with the AV, I was like, I was encouraging, the ladies who were helping you, and I was like, this is not even about what you're experiencing. Is not even about this conference. It's about the next conference.
The next ones, yes.
That you learn, and then you grow, and then be like, okay, I can do this better.
Yes, and we know how to reach. We had a meeting, and talking about the debriefing, what we can do and how we can make it better. That's what this is all about. It happens on our own personal growth. It doesn't just happen when we're putting on a conference. In our own personal growth. You get to a point, because God wants to get something. He wants to expand you. So he's going to bring something to you that you may not want to deal with or didn't even know was there. He'll put his finger on it and say, okay, now, and this pain, it can be uncomfortable. But then in being uncomfortable, it gives you the opportunity, again, to grow and to expand. And to mature for Pete's sakes, to mature.
Because when you're uncomfortable, though, guess who gets to come in and do something about it? The Comforter, the Holy Spirit.
There you go.
9 gifts and the 9 fruit to help temper you and to help raise you to promote you. What the scriptures say, to elevate you, to get you to the next level by dying to the flesh. And just realizing that you have something to offer that's meant to be replicated. And you use this word replicate, but the Bible says that we are to be fruitful, multiply, replenish, to subdue the earth. And what are we doing in the earth? It's not that we're ruling dictators of the earth, but we're subduing the foolishness. We're subduing the sin. We're subduing the darkness that has gone, the disorder that is now in the earth. That was never meant to be there in the first place. And so you are full-fledged operating in your genius. The purpose, if I get to the last part of the equation, your purpose in life is simple. It's to identify your God-given talent and to recognize that you're to utilize that talent to address the thing that you hate, your passion. And in doing so, you unlock not only your genius, but then the people's genius who's around you, because you recognize that it's not about, even though the affirmation is there, the self-affirmation, it's not about you, it's about affirming others. And you can't affirm somebody else until you allow yourself to be affirmed.
Yes. There's something that I want in being passionate. I also want, for anybody that's listening, it's okay to be intense. I remember having a conversation with some women. I was coming back from a women's conference, and I was talking to these women, driving back. And as I was speaking, I immediately realized how intense I was being. And I even said it. I said, yeah, I know I'm intense because I'm passionate. I recognized it was my passion. And when I got home, and it's funny how you replay, the conversation, and then you think, wow, did I overstep my boundaries? Was I too much for them? And the moment I start thinking like that, the Lord would not even let me go way off in the left field. Immediately, I heard him say, cry loud and spare not. And that was, for me, my affirmation that what I was doing was exactly what I was supposed to do. I was being exactly who I needed to be in that moment. and being intense was it.
Can you
Because
say that
they may
again?
not have otherwise heard anything else. But what they did, they took my intensity with what I said and remembered it. So anyone with a passion, the intensity can come out in your voice.
Yep.
It can come out in your actions, you know. And I just want to say, if anybody is listening and with their passion, it's okay to be intense. It really is. It's okay. Because otherwise people may not remember it.
Right.
They may not give it a second thought. Oh,
Sometimes
that's just
people are
no.
walking through life and they are in this kind of comatose state because
Yes,
they've been being spoken to like this fish out of water, like you're supposed to be climbing this tree, you're not climbing it, and they're like almost comatose. And it takes somebody that's intense to wake them up like, whoa, wait a minute, what just happened? What did you just say?
Right.
Say what you said again. What is it that the Lord told you? He said,
cry loud and spare not.
Cry loud and spare not. Wow.
Cry loud and spare not. I'm telling you, I heard just as clear as I'm talking to you. When I was going over that, I was like, maybe I was being a little too intense. You know, God, I could be too much. Cry loud and spare not.
That's a whole conference title right there.
That sure is, ain't it? That surely is. Maybe next year.
Yeah,
but that's
maybe next year, right?
Maybe next year. But the passion, that is my passion. I love hard. Strength or weakness, I don't know. I just know I give everything that I have because God put it in me to give.
Yeah.
And the more I give, the more he gives to me.
I was going to say, yep.
The more he gives, I give it out. I can't hold it. It's too much to hold. And my passion is to do is the deliverance. When I wrote the book Deliverance 101, and I remembered the lockdown had just happened. And I said, Lord, I wrote this book. Now what am I supposed to do?
Right.
And then that's when he said, you got social media platform. It was just like that. I didn't even know about, I remember we had, Skype and some of these other platforms. And he said, you can go online and teach it. People send out an email, ask them to be a participant. And I did. I was surprised. I won't lie. I was surprised because I told them I got this book. Everybody knew I wrote the book. I said, but I want to do the teaching on it. I was very surprised at how many people actually hung with literally 16 weeks. There was a few folks that was kind of in and out, but there were 12 that hung with me for 16. I say hung with the teaching 16 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was actually the very first class. The very first class, I hung up, because I went on Zoom, I hung up, and it was in that very moment. And it may sound, I don't want to sound like what I'm about to say. I don't want people to take it literally, but to just say it, in that moment, I felt like I'm here. I've arrived. I'm here. I looked around. Yeah. I was like, oh, dang, I'm really here. God, I was like, I'm really here. The very thing you said, I'm getting chills. It ain't them. I'm just getting chills. Just thinking about the moment that I realized I was doing exactly what I was called to do in the time that I'm called to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that thing blew my mind because I was like, oh my God. I looked around. I thought I was in a different room. Because I did. I was just like, oh my God, I am here. I am here. I'm really here. And I just can't believe, I'm sitting there in utter amazement. And Evangelist Reggie, everything from that day to this has reminds me, keeps me focused. You're a deliverance minister.
Yeah.
So your messages are about deliverance. Okay, what scripture you use? It's gonna weave on back its way. It's gonna weave its way back into deliverance.
Yeah.
Apostle Larry mentioned, bless his heart, because right after that, he said it. He said, "You're the deliverance minister."
Mm-hmm.
That was something he hadn't said before. He knew I was called to being a prophet, but he even said it. You're the deliverance minister. We know what you are. And that was just like the seal. And when I say the seal, not that I needed him to affirm it, but when you start hearing it, when you really, really, really start hearing it from different individuals, you, prophet, I got my team down here, everybody's saying it, and you can't help but to hear it.
Right.
Because I knew I was there. I knew I was there. And I go back and I don't have to be reminded. I know my purpose. I tell people, I know my purpose. I know why I am here and why I am here and what I need to do. And by doing so, making sure, and Miles Monroe, I believe it was Miles Monroe that said this, and I'm just coining it. I want to leave here. And when I leave here, I want to leave here empty. It's just that simple. I want to leave here empty. So I want somebody else to have the passion or are equipped to do this and to do it better than me. Yeah.
That's that kingdom destiny you mentioned. And even I remember when you first said kingdom destiny as a part of your ministry in Dallas, Texas rather. And it reminded me of the end part of my title of my book. And it's Uncommon Destiny. The kingdom is uncommon. And our goal is to, if we leave everything on the table and we leave this earth empty, the kingdom won't be as uncommon as it was when we leave, because we're going to be spreading. It's like it's a light that we just spread, and that light just gives other people the ability to then light somebody else's candle and say, you know what, though, let's unite, let's spread this. And I want to end with this, because as I'm hearing you, the thing about walking in your genius is that when you're walking at, you don't have to be at your capacity, right? I had this one guy, he said, I'm never at a 10 in the thing that I do. I'm always at a 9 because there's room for improvement. But when you identify your genius, and then when I'm walking in my genius, and then when Apostle is walking in his genius, because the Kingdom Advancement Center was birthed out of the things that he saw in the church, that he was like, I hate that the church is not operating how it's supposed to, and I can do something about it. So the combination of our three geniuses, you had this drive to be a deliverance minister. You had this content, but you was like, I don't know how to release this content. I come along, hey, I know what my genius is, and it's to help other authors become, it's to help other people become authors, to take your manuscript that's in your head and make a book in your hands, right? And then say, what are you going to do with it? And then Apostle came along and had the Kingdom Advancement Center that then gave you a platform to have that 16-week course. Right. So when all of us are operating on, when we're in our wheelhouse, it's another word to use that denotes genius, then we can come together and just begin to do some remarkable things and reach beyond our own scope to accomplish something together that's greater than what we would have accomplished individually.
I never saw, it's amazing how, sometimes I guess if God really showed us some things, we back up.
You would though, like, I don't know.
I don't know. I never saw this. As a matter of fact, when the day that the book was, the day that we hit that button,
made it live.
Yeah, you and I prayed, and I had even told you that I said this before we even prayed, but I wanted the book to be in another language. I always said it. I felt that it would be Spanish first. I said I wanted to be in other languages because though I'm not physically going into these other countries. And I'm not saying that God won't permit that at my age. I can still do some things, right? But at that point, I couldn't see myself going into these other countries. But what I did see was that Deliverance 101 book going into other countries. I did see that. I continue to prophesy that. I continue to speak life to that. And once you and I talked about it and we agreed, then little did I know, I won't say little did I know, I knew it would happen. I just didn't know when it would happen. And I didn't know how it was going to happen, but it happened. Yep. So here it is. We've got the Deliverance 101 manual in Spanish.
And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I was like, that's great. I don't know how that's going to happen. But then it just hit when the time came, that thing was unlocked in heaven. And that word of wisdom came like, do this and this will happen. And then the right people came into the picture. And it's just about, it's just being
the
obedient.
person, this is funny. The very person that helped me with that was the person I thought about from the beginning. And that person just was not getting on board. Look, they was invited to the first class, and they was kind of in. Every time I told them, I forgot, all this other stuff. I'm like, that's okay. I didn't pray on that person. I just knew eventually. I'm like, because I know this. I used to work with this person. I used to work with Annette, and I knew that she could translate. This is what she does. And I just said, well, Lord, you know what? I'm gonna leave this alone, and I'm gonna let you do this. And then when we found out that, look, take her hands off, and when that happened, then he touched her heart. And the funny thing is that when you told me that I could do it, through the Google, and then I said, well, can I send it to you for you to at least look it over? Sure. She had the English version, and she looked at the Spanish version. And honestly, she called me back. She said, you know what? She said, when you teach this class again, she said, because I'm learning so much, I'm going to be in there. She said, I know I wasn't right. Look, she even said, I know I was in and out, and I was, she said, but this here, she said, this deliverance thing, and she just talks about it. She works in Austin at a school, and she's telling everybody at her school, all of the Latinos, y'all need to get this book, right? She's promoting it, not just because her name is on it, but because it took her to look at it in Spanish and look at it in English and say, oh my God, look at what I've been look at what I missed. And to make it as simple, going back to keeping it simple, because Apostle Larry even said how he had read many books on deliverance, and out of his mouth was, this is the best, not that it's new and it's on this, because we can grab on stuff that's new. And he had to think about it. He had to think about, was he saying it because it came from me, or was he saying it because it was, the Lord speaking to him? He had to know for sure. And he knew for sure that this was the best book that he had read on deliverance, and how I had taken the time to break it down. There was no reason for anybody to misunderstand anything, because now you got definitions.
Right.
You got scripture supporting every subject. And and I can put it out here, and I guess by doing this, I'm making myself accountable, because I got to get to the second edition, because there are things that's not in the first one.
Sure.
So there you have it.
Of the making of books, there will be no end. So, I'm ready.
All right, I am too.
So I want to thank you. This is about our time, but this has been meaty. Yeah, this has been meaty. This has been good. I want to thank you again for taking the time. Thank you for entrusting me with your manuscripts, and for continuing to challenge me as we challenge one another. Iron sharpens iron, and we definitely are in the business of sharpening. And so this has been Reggie Key. This has been Evangelist Reggie Key, your host, motivational speaker, and author of Uncommon Genius, Uncommon Destiny. And it's my uncommon cue to see the genius in you.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.